How's it going, everyone? How you doing? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh, aka the Lonely Hermit, and today, ladies and gentlemen, we have our week 1 roundup, the first official roundup of the season. Week 1 was a bit of a doozy. We had quite a bit of everything. We had what? 4 matches decided by 1 kill. We had a couple matches decided by a couple kills, and then a couple matches that weren't so close. But for the most part, it was a pretty intense week. A lot of close battles, a lot of matches that could have gone either way. Maybe a couple of mistakes were made so that the scores ended up the way they did, but we'll be going over that in a bit. But before we do that, you guys need to subscribe to this channel if you want to see some more weekly roundups where we go over the whole week in the EBL. We have power rankings where, well, everyone's ranked in terms of their performances. And then we have the top 5 plays and top 5 fails, which are pretty self-explanatory. So be sure to subscribe to this channel so you do not miss any of that good stuff. Check out the EBL Twitter. And of course, if you do not want to miss a single match in the Elite Battle League, check out all the coaches in the description down below. Go subscribe to them. Make sure to watch both perspectives as well. It honestly adds a whole heck of a lot to the matches. Oh, and EBL matches are every Saturday, of course. But let's get right into this. First up, we have the reigning, defending champions of not the world, just the EBL. The Fort Sill Warriors and Lionheart Plays. They took on the Snowdonian Frostmoths and Jakey XY. And Jakey, good freaking job. I know you lost. The Fort Sill Warriors did win 6-5. I know you lost, but that was a heck of a performance, man. You were questioning whether you should have been confident about that, whether you should have been happy about that. I think you should absolutely be happy about that performance. Maybe not the results, but I think the performance spoke volumes to the amount of confidence you came into this match with. I think that was really, really important. Humberto and I said this in the preseason roundup. We said, you gotta, for the newcomers, they gotta come into these matches ready and confident, and that's exactly what a lot of these newcomers did. But Frostmoths is probably gave me one of the more impressive performances out of all the newcomers. Jakey really stepped up big time, and I thought he really put in a lot of work against Fort Sill here. Again, ultimately it did not go his way, but I liked the strategies that came out with it. I thought the Frostmoth lead for Snowdonian was great. He came in, Jakey came in with the Frostmoth, set up a couple quiver dances, managed to get a couple kills. Frostmoth did eventually go down to Lugia, which wasn't great because then Lugia was able to kind of start to work this the Frostmoths a bit. He started to kind of work them down, whittle them down a bit. Lugia did quite a bit of work, got a couple kills there. And Lugia just overall was just stalling. I think that was the big part of Lugia's game right there, was just slowing the momentum of the Frostmoths, because the Frostmoths definitely had momentum at the beginning of that match, and Lugia came in to try and slow that down and gain the momentum back for the side of Fort Sill, which is exactly what Lugia did. And from that point on, Fort Sill, I mean, Humberto's really good at doing what he has to do to protect his pieces. He knows how to protect his king. He knows how to protect his best pieces on his chessboard. So ultimately he was able to work it so that Mewtwo could come in, and Mewtwo ended up getting 3 kills. Your Mega Conference MVP Mewtwo racked up 3 kills, 2 of which I believe were the final kills of the match. It definitely was close, though. This is not a match that's I don't think we were expecting out of Jakey, but my God, am I happy it happened. This was a really good match. Again, Jakey, this is a match that you definitely should be proud of. It was a good performance, a solid performance against the reigning champ of all people. I mean, someone had to take him on, and you definitely put on a show. So I'm excited to see what you could do the rest of the season. The other play I did like as well was the Focus Energy Sniper Inteleon, that Gigantamax. Ultimately, the play kind of fizzled out. I mean, Inteleon did get a kill on the Leafeon, which, I mean, the hindsight play would have been to stay in on Leafeon and Ice Beam, knowing he was going to get a crit. I mean, Sniper plus Focus Energy pretty much means a crit, but I do not blame Jakey for wanting to Dynamax or Gigantamax and just make sure that Leafeon goes down. Because if he didn't Gigantamax, he would have had all 3 turns against the Lugia, which may have played, may have been a little different with how much damage he would have been able to do to Lugia. So I understand why he Gigantamaxed in front of Leaf, and he didn't want to take the risk, but hindsight, obviously, don't Gigantamax and have all 3 turns against Lugia. But, it is what it is. The other play I didn't necessarily like was not letting Inteleon fight the Lugia. Instead, Jakey sent out Zarude against Lugia. I think Inteleon's, I know Lugia, I think was +2 special defense at the time, but I think an Ice Beam plus the Toxic may have been enough to knock down Lugia. Either way, Inteleon was next time Inteleon came in, it died right away. So he could have easily sent an Inteleon against Lugia, Ice Beamed, and let the Toxic go down. And then Zarude would have came in. Maybe Zarude would have still taken that Aeroblast from Lugia. But at the end of the day, I want to take that chance because Inteleon ultimately didn't do anything else in the rest of that match. So that was a bit of a shaky play out of Jakey, a shaky Jakey. But other than that, I really like the confidence that Jakey played with, and although he lost, it was incredibly close. And this match, a couple decisions go differently for Jakey. I mean, who knows? This could have been a 6-5 his way. So I like the confidence. I like the plays. I also think the Comfey Calm Mind would have made for a more interesting end. I would have been curious to see how that would have mattered. With the Draining Kiss priority, you know, being +1, whether or not that would have made a big difference, or whether Mewtwo would have done more damage than Comfey could have healed. So that would have been made for a really more interesting end. Maybe the Calm Mind would have been the better play there, but ultimately, I don't know if the result would have been different. But regardless, again, Jakey played really well. I love the confidence, and I love the way you pushed the champ to the edge. That was a really, really awesome match, and I loved it. I loved it. So GG's to both of you guys. Next up, we have the Texas Tyranitar versus the New York Metangs. This was an interesting matchup here. New York definitely have a much slower, methodical play style, and Maxis was more than willing to spend the time to make sure he can whittle down Texas. But I think one of the big turning points for Texas was taking down that Gastrodon. I think the Doorman made a huge call there to let Yveltal go to sleep in front of the Gastrodon, or go to sleep, but in exchange he took down the Gastrodon, because New York's Gastrodon was causing a lot of problems with the switching. It was just checking everything Texas was doing on the switches. So taking down Gastrodon was a really key kill on the side of Texas. They did walk away with a 6-4 win, by the way. I should say the score as soon as I bring up the teams. Texas did win this match 6-4. I think excuse me, I think that was a big turning point, though. That was a huge sacrifice play out of the Doorman, but it paid off because Gastrodon was punishing those switches, and it did also take out Galvantula and Blacephalon, which were kills that weren't exactly favorable for the side of Texas. I think, although I do think that New York had a little bit of overconfidence in this match, especially when it came to a couple of matchups, most namely the Snorlax. I distinctly remember Max is saying something to the likes of when Snorlax was in front of Gigalith, and Maxis decided to Dynamax Gigalith. I distinctly remember him saying Snorlax can't do much here, which, if you know Snorlax, you know Snorlax can do much, especially against Pokemon a rock type, knowing Snorlax can learn steel type moves and fighting type moves. So Snorlax definitely did do much on the end part there, which we'll talk about more in a second here. But I think most importantly, that Galarian Darmanitan, although it only got 1 kill, it was just a nuisance. It was annoying. It was just there. Its presence was making things more difficult for New York. It got a couple of good hits off, most namely taking out the Dialga, which was its main kill. Now, like I said, it was quite a switch fest at the beginning. They were kind of trying to work each other. Like I said, I think New York's play style is a lot more slower and methodical. So naturally, that's going to lead to a much slower match with lots of switching. But the big play that ultimately I think decided this match was when Galarian Darmanitan took down Dialga. Now Maxis had a decision here. He only had, I believe, Gigalith and Kartana left. Instead of sending in Kartana to finish the Darmanitan and get a nice little beast boost going, he instead decided to send in Gigalith and finish their Darmanitan, and then he ended up facing off against the Snorlax. Like I said, they both Dynamax, well, Snorlax was Gigantamax. Snorlax actually one-shot Gigalith, took it out, and Alan, the Doorman, was carrying a fire-type move for Kartana to win the match with the Snorlax. But I think that play ultimately costed Maxis. I think that was the big misplay. I mean, Snorlax is a very beefy mon, so there's a small possibility Snorlax still would have lived that hit. Even, I mean, if Maxis decided to Dynamax, I don't know how much of a difference that would make because Max Knuckle doesn't change the power of the move all too much. But that fire type move was going to kill Snorlax no matter what. So the question would have been, when Kartana was in at +1, the question would have been, would Snorlax take a hit? I think the play for Maxis would have been to send in Kartana or Darmanitan. If he had a fighting type move, Dynamax, use the fighting type move, kill Darmanitan, get +2, and then when the Snorlax comes in, that's an easy, that would have killed. So I think that would have been the better play for Maxis, just sending in Kartana if he had a fighting type move. I don't remember off the top of my head. Dynamax, Max Knuckle, hit the Snorlax with a +2. It likely would have died. A +1 is a little bit more of a question mark because, again, Snorlax is fairly beefy, and I don't know if Alan had the Snorlax built into defense and HP. It's possible, or at least defense. It did. I mean, it had a ton of HP when I Gigantamax, of course. That's just Snorlax. It's naturally bulky like that. But I would have been very curious to see how this match would have turned out had Kartana come in to finish the Darmanitan. But I think sending in Gigalith was not the best play. Obviously, the Kartana would have given Maxis a better chance of finishing this match, or at least making it a 6-5. Again, it would have just came down to Snorlax's survivability, because if Yveltal was asleep, on the chance it would have woken up, then I mean, I guess there would have been some work there for Yveltal to do, but Snorlax did enough. But I think Galarian Darmanitan was kind of the secret key for Texas in this match. But ultimately, it came down to that one switch and Gastrodon. That was a big risky play by Alan, you know, taking down Gastrodon, letting Yveltal go to sleep. It was a big risky play, but ultimately it paid off. It did pay off. So GG's to both of you guys. Moving on, we have the TJ Dropouts versus the San Antonio Espers. I'm gonna be 100,000,000,000% honest. This was not the most entertaining match of the world Tactical, definitely not entertaining. I can see where both coaches were coming from with a lot of their switches and all that good stuff, though. But basically, the way this match started was kind of high pace. San Antonio sent out Kyogre. I want to say TJ led with, oh man, who did TJ lead with? It was Volcanion. TJ led with Volcanion. Kyogre Dynamax killed Volcanion. Then Rillaboom came in and Dynamaxed and was able to take out the Kyogre. And then it was 1-1, and then it stood like that for a while. We went probably, I mean, maybe 10 minutes without a kill. I'm not even joking. Where these two were just switching around, trying to play around each other. A little bit of chip damage here, a little bit of chip damage there. The two of them were just switching around, trying to get each other in the right position. And ultimately, San Antonio were able to scrape away with a couple extra kills versus TJ's only one extra that they ended up getting, and San Antonio did win this match 3-2. But with all the switching, I mean, that burned all of the time. It burned all of the time. This match went to timer, obviously. But like I said, it was at 1-1. I mean, it felt like forever, where they were just trying to work each other, just trying to move around pieces, trying to get each other in the right position. I think mainly for San Antonio, it was Azumarill trying to catch something in the Perish Song trap. It was trying to do something with that. I don't like a couple of plays out of TJ. I did like the Dynamax right off the rip with San Antonio. I thought that was great, but I didn't really like a couple of plays with TJ. Cinderace in front of Azumarill. I know it's got Gunk Shot, but you may as well just send in Rillaboom, or let Rillaboom Grassy Glide the Azumarill since it was about to die anyways. And then next time Rillaboom came in, it just died. Like there was it didn't do anything. So the Cinderace into Azumarill was not my favorite play in the world. But I do like the way San Antonio kept their pieces in the back. I think if this match had an extra 10 minutes, I mean, I don't know, they might have kept switching around or we might have gotten an end result. I think the end result would have come down to whether Glalie would have gotten taken out, which, I mean, there was a good chance that Glalie was not going to live for long. And then once Glalie went down, everything else could have reigned supreme, especially the Zygarde would have been able to come in and just do what it had to do. But like I said, it was a huge switch fest. It got a little boring at times when they would just kind of work around each other. It was, like I said, it was tactical, but it was not the most entertaining match in the world. It kind of reminded me of the season 3 championship between Bob and Pidge. I got flashes of that one as well. But I think San Antonio did what they had to do in this match. Like I said, it was tactical, and I think San Antonio had the leg up with the switches and the decisions that they were making. Misclick Shadow Sneak twice, which was fun. The first time he didn't even slide, didn't even notice. The second time he very much noticed, and that might have gotten him an extra kill. But that was funny. But other than that, I think San Antonio just played this match a little bit better than TJ, and ultimately were able to walk away with a 3-2 win because they had more Pokemon with the timer. It ultimately came down to Mandibuzz just roosting and stalling out the rest of the timer. So for those of you who might not know, we don't allow stalling. We allow stalling in terms of using moves to stall. You can't just sit there and not play, courtesy of yours truly. But the Mandibuzz was able to stall out the rest of the timer and complete the victory for the newcomers in San Antonio. So that was a great win out of USLA. Moving on, we have the Iowa Incineroar versus the Carolina Garchomps. Iowa is we're not going to beat the dead horse here. Iowa is suffering a punishment. They can only bring 4 Pokemon per match, which means the opponent is always 2-0 ahead. Carolina ended up winning this match 6-4 by virtue of obviously that 2 Pokemon penalty. Mostly, I think that played a big factor in this matchup here. Obviously, I liked the way Landon Infernoman was approaching this match. He kind of just came out offensive, just went out there and just attacked. I mean, I think the having Focus Blast on the Raichu was definitely a signal that Landon was going to come into this match and just go for it, which fair enough. I mean, he should. He doesn't have a lot of room to work with. That's the problem with Iowa right now, is if they lose 1 Pokemon, I mean, that's already, you're down 0-3. If you lose the first Pokemon of the match, you're already down 0-3 just like that. So I think Iowa obviously has a hill to climb, but I like Landon's mentality of just go for it. You may as well just go for it. Just go for it in this match. And I think it was paying off for a bit. But ultimately, I think Carolina did well to keep a lot of their pieces alive and safe. I think this match probably should have been a 6-3. Vanillex got a lucky freeze on the Salazzle and was able to take it out. Salazzle would have likely finished the match because Vanillex was the last Pokemon for Iowa. Zacian did do a bit of work in the middle of the match. Like I said, it took out Tauros, and more namely, it took out Naganadel, which, I mean, ultimately, it was interesting. I expected Naganadel to die to that Zacian. I did not think Naganadel was going to live. Naganedel's very fragile, so that was not too surprising. Landon, it was a nice momentum boost until Zacian got taken out by Zeraora. And then from that point on, it was only Vanillex left, and obviously Ice types don't have the most survivability in the world. And Carolina had Salazzle, Hitmonchan, and I cannot remember if Zeraora had CC, close combat, or not. So he had 3 Pokemon that could have finished that Vanillex. So I never saw Vanillex pulling it off unless it got some crazy hacks and froze 3 Pokemon in a row. Then it maybe, but unfortunately that did not happen. It froze the Salazzle, like I said, froze the Salazzle before Salazzle could take out the Vanillex. But yeah, once I noticed, because it took me a second to realize, like, wait a minute, Vanillex is the last Pokemon. Once I saw that, I was like, yeah, this match is over. Froze the Salazzle, gave me a second where I was like, wait a minute. But ultimately, Hitmonchan came in, Dynamax, and finished the Vanillex. So ultimately, it was a good win from Carolina. I think Mike did well. I think Newt did well to sorry, I have Florida underneath, that's why I said Mike. Newt did well to keep his pieces, I forget what the phrase is. He did well to keep all his apples in the basket. I think that's the phrase, something like that. He just did really well to make sure the Pokemon he needed at the end were alive at the end, like Zeraora, like Hitmonchan, like Salazzle, and ultimately was able to walk away with a pretty solid win here. But a good showing out of Iowa nonetheless. I mean, he pretty much equalized in terms of how many Pokemon he had. You know, he racked up 4 kills in that one. Maybe it should have only been 3, but, you know, got the lucky freeze, so that brought the scoreline a little closer. But I do think Landon, if you're watching, I do think you played really well. It's just, obviously, climbing out of an 0-2 hole is not going to be easy. But I like the mentality. Just go for it. Why not? You're already at a disadvantage. You might as well just say screw it and go for it. But I think Newt did well, like I said, to preserve his best Pokemon and make sure he put himself into the best position to win. Next up, we have the former champ taking on the former champ Poke Pidge and the Colchester Celtics taking on the Florida Rowlets and their coach Mike the Quick, a newcomer to the league. Wow, this this match was dizzy. I'm not gonna lie. For a hot second there, it looked like Pidge was just gonna run away with it, have a really solid start to the season, probably like a 6-2 win, 6-3. It looked like, you know, that was that. He was gonna walk away with a win, and it was gonna be comfortable. But Groudon had other words. Had other words. So the match started relatively well for Pidge. For the most part, he kept Mike on the back foot. And once Zamazenta touched the field, that's when the match really got broken open. Prior to that, I mean, it was like 2-1, I think, or 2-2, something along those lines. But then, like I said, Zamazenta came out and took out Cinderace, Incineroar, and Dracovish. Took out all three of those Pokemon before it eventually went down to Groudon. Now, when Zamazenta took out Cinderace, which was the 7th kill of the match, Pidge found himself in a very comfortable spot. He was up what was it, 5-2, I believe, 5-2 at the time. So all Pidge needed was to finish the Groudon, and he even said it. He was like, it's just the Groudon left, which turned out to be famous last words. Yeah, the Groudon came on the field, finished off Zamazenta, because Zamazenta was fairly weak because of the close combats, mainly. So Groudon was able to kill the Zamazenta. Then Tauros came out, died immediately. I don't even think it touched the Groudon. But then Ice-Q came out. Ice-Q came out, and Ice-Q tried to take down the Groudon on its own, but unfortunately, the Groudon hit the Ice-Q with a fire punch and burned it. But even with the burn, the ice punch from Ice-Q left Groudon at 6 HP from about, I mean, Groudon was still in the green, and it took it all the way down to 6 HP while it was burned, which is very impressive. But the burn from the fire punch on Groudon was massive. I mean, huge. You know, the thing with comebacks is there always has to be like a little bit of RNG in there, right? There has to be a little bit of RNG in there, and that was Mike's RNG moment. Groudon ate the hit from Ice-Q, finished it, and then from my calculations, of course, these two competitors could have built the Pokemon differently than the way I calculated it. Groudon was always going to kill the Wishy-Washy, but there was a crit hit on the Wishy-Washy that just effectively made sure that there was no shot that Wishy-Washy was going to kill the Groudon. And yes, guys, Groudon pulled off possibly the league's first 1v4. I'm not sure. We've definitely seen 1v3s courtesy of Zacian. I think Zacian has had like 3 or 4 1v3s. I don't know if we've seen a 1v4. You guys, anyone who's kept track, you know, Humberto or Pidge, if y'all are watching, let me know down below, because I feel like this might be the first 1v4 we've seen in the EBL. If not, then it's probably like the second, because it's just such a rare occurrence. You don't see a Pokemon come from behind. So this could have, I mean, this mainly was a case of RNG. The burn on the Ice-Q saved the Groudon, otherwise it would have died. But it's also a case of, I think maybe Groudon was just a really good matchup for the rest of these Pokemon. Zamazenta was weak, and then Tauros obviously again didn't do anything. Wishy-Washy was too weak to do anything. Ice-Q was the only one that could have had an opportunity. Now there was a play I thought of for Pidge. What he could have done, he could have switched out. This is obviously hindsight, knowing Tauros was going to die. He could have swapped out Zamazenta, went to Tauros, let Tauros go down, then bring Zamazenta back in and try to do as much damage as possible to the Groudon. That likely would have led to a win, or at least enough to chip the Groudon to where that burn, let's say that burn happens, right, on the Ice-Q no matter what. Then the Ice-Q would have been well within range for an Ice Punch to kill, even while it was burned. So I think that would have been Pidge's better play. Would have been to swap out Zamazenta instead of letting it go down. I know it was weak. I know it was weakened, but the thing is, Zamazenta is an incredibly useful piece to the puzzle. So he definitely should have preserved that Zamazenta a little better, in my opinion. I think he could have easily brought that back out, sent out Tauros, let it go down, or maybe get a hit. Maybe it would have taken a hit. Who knows? Obviously it didn't when it got sent out in this match, but who knows, maybe it would have taken a hit, could have fired off another one, or just whatever. But yeah, swap out, send Zamazenta back in, get that defense boost, and then do what you got to do from there. But the burn on Ice Cube was definitely the turning point of when essentially this was sealed. The 1v4 was going to be completed. When I was watching this match initially, I didn't even realize what was going on. It wasn't until I watched it back the second time when I was like, holy crap, Groudon pulled off a 1v4. Like it was stunning. It was really incredible to watch, because at the end, even at the end, when Groudon beat Wishiwashi the first time I was watching, I was like, okay. I didn't click in my head like, wait, I was watching it with Pidge, and then I was like, you lost? Like, what? You lost? And he's like, yeah, he got me. The Groudon just did everything at the end there. But I mean, the burn and then living on 6 HP was big, and being able to turn around, kill the Ice Cube and kill the Wishiwashi was big. Of course, Groudon is your Dynamax Conference MVP naturally. 4 kills, no deaths usually leads to an MVP. So yeah, Groudon did incredibly well. I think it was a case of a little bit of RNG in there, but also just a bad matchup, honestly. Just a bad matchup for all the Pokemon left that had to take on Groudon. But like I said, I think that play, switching out of Zamazenta to Tauros, would have benefited Pidge a lot, because then Zamazenta would have gotten that defense boost back. It would have gotten rid of all the defense drops, would have came back in and got a defense boost. I think sacrificing Tauros would have been the better play there. But, you know, hindsight, obviously, that's one of the flaws with doing these shows, is we have the benefit of hindsight. So I know in the moment that may not have seemed like a good decision. Just let, you know, Zamazenta go down. But I thought it was just too much of an important piece of the team to just let it go down like that. Tauros is not nearly as important as Zamazenta. So yeah, that was definitely very surprising to me. That 1v4, it was incredible. Good job, Mike. And now Pidge is 0-2 against newcomers in the last 2 seasons in week 1. So that's an interesting little statistic there. Next up, we have yours truly and the LA Inferno taking on the Walton Wingles. The LA Inferno walked away with a fairly comfortable 6-2 win, although there were a couple decisions made on the side of Walton that could have benefited them and maybe could have turned this match on its head. It was very clear from watching Nate's point of view that he didn't think I knew he had a Trick Room team, which piece of advice, Nate, always assume. If you're using a gimmick team, I mean, it's kind of anyone. If you're using a gimmick team, just assume your opponent knows what you're doing. Because as soon as I Trick Roomed back and taunted, I was able to gain control through Zacian. I got a lot of momentum there. Rotom Heat, killing the Slowbro, and then doing enough damage to Malamar for Nagano to come and finish it, get the beast boost, and from that point on, it was easy breezy. But that's a word of advice to you, Nate. I mean, just expect your opponents to know about Trick Room. I mean, it's the fact that you got so caught off guard told me that you didn't think I knew. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I personally think that, I mean, you should always study the opponent's team, and that was one of the things I noticed. I noticed all his Pokemon were slow, very slow. I noticed he had Malamar, he had Slowbro. They're both Trick Roomers. So it's a Trick Room team. I just expected for it. I planned for it. I saw it coming. And I was able to counter at the beginning. Now, the moment that I mentioned earlier where he could have possibly turned this match on its head is when Malamar was in front of Rotom Heat. Now, Rotom Heat was never going to kill Malamar unless I got a crit. Again, that's the only way Malamar would have gone down. And even then, it still might have taken a hit. In that moment, Nate absolutely positively should have clicked Trick Room again. He would have outsped the next turn. He would have killed Rotom Heat. Would have burned a turn to the Trick Room, but you know, it is what it is. You would have had 4 more turns of Trick Room to play around with. Yeah, 4 more turns to play around with where his team would have been faster. And this whole match could have gone differently. This whole match could have been different. Not saying the end result would have been different, but at least the scoreline, it would have been closer. The point is, it would have been closer. I also was expecting Trick Room on Slowbro. He didn't bring it, which I think also could have benefited him when Rotom Heat was in front of Slowbro. He could have clicked Trick Room and, you know, possibly gotten it off there. Obviously, the quick draw got off, so he would have been able to click Trick Room and it would have gone off. And then next turn, he could have sent in Celesteela and just started to do work or something along those lines. Maybe not in front of Rotom, but something along those lines. So next time, Nate, just make sure to prepare in case your opponent knows what you're going to do. You know, don't expect to catch your opponent by surprise. Just expect your opponent to know what you're going to do. I mean, that's key with a gimmick team. Expect the counters. So yeah, once I did that, I mean, Nate was just kind of thrown off for the rest of the battle, and I was able to control it. Like I said, Naganadel came in on Malamar, killed it with a Dragon Pulse, got the Beast Boost. I didn't build into speed on purpose because I knew I'd outspeed his whole team regardless, so I just built in special attack. So I was able to kill Malamar. The Snorlax came in. The rest talk happened with Snorlax, but I just took a big risk, clicked Nasty Plot again, so I could take out the Snorlax faster, because Snorlax's special defense is nuts. So I just Nasty Plotted to make sure I could get rid of it a little quicker, and then Celesteela came in. I Dynamax. I know it might have been rubbing salt in the wound. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I just wanted to make sure. I know I was like +4. I just wanted to make sure that I secured the kill. I wasn't trying to risk anything with Celesteela, so I just wanted to make sure I got the kill. I wasn't like trying to rub it in Nate's face or anything. I just wanted to make sure I secured the kill. Although in hindsight, I really didn't need it. But yeah, that was it could have been closer, definitely, but I do think Nate has played better in that match than he has in the past. So I'm excited to see what else Nate does for the rest of the season here. Next up is a match we're not really gonna stick around on for too long. It's the Detroit Luxors versus the Greater Manchester Greninjas. Now, I want to go ahead and preface this by saying the Raging Lake did not have any time really to prep for this match. I even looked like some of his Pokemon were possibly not even EV trained as well. So I'm not going to go too hard on the guy. It was a 6-0 sweep in favor of Detroit. It wasn't a clean 6-0 in terms of one Pokemon didn't get all the kills. It was Alolan Ninetales who got 3, and then Salamence got the other 3. But I mean, regardless, it was still a pretty hard match to watch. Like I said, preface it by saying the Raging Lake hasn't had a whole heck of a lot of time to prep and all that good stuff. So it's unfortunate. You know, he just simply got outworked in this match. It was a pretty long, drawn out sweep. It was around 8 minutes from what I saw. It's a pretty long sweep as far as sweeps go. Generally, I mean, they're usually under 10 minutes, but that one felt longer. I don't know why. I don't know why that one felt longer or like what it was, but yeah, that was definitely a long, drawn-out sweep. You can kind of start to see it coming after the 3rd kill on Vikavolt there. After that, I mean, I was like, yeah, this does not look pretty. This does not look pretty because, yeah, the Alolan Ninetales got the first 3 kills, Salamence got the next 3 kills, and it was just game over once that 3rd kill happened, honestly. And it was just, you just saw it coming from a mile away. So, like I said, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. It's you know, unfortunate Raging Lake didn't have a lot of time to prep. But good job, Max, for taking advantage and you know, not slipping up in that sense, you know, making sure you still do your job. I think Max did well, made the right decisions and all that good stuff. So, like I said, we're not going to spend too much time on that one. Moving on, we have the Montebello Morpeko versus the DC Starmies. The Montebello Morpeko walked away with a close 6-5 win over DC. It was not a clean win out of Montebello there. Carlos, Mr. Toast, definitely made a few mistakes in that match. I think the first one we saw was him not having a Dragon type move on Reshiram versus the Haxorus, because Haxorus took out Reshiram. That was the 2nd kill of the game. So your legend going down, being one of the early kills in the game, is not good unless you've gotten, you know, unless there was a fair trade where like your legend got 2 kills, but it went down. That's okay. You got a fair trade there, but you do not want your legend to go down after it only got 1 kill on Mamoswine. Haxorus came in, took a hit from the Reshiram, and then just dished it right back to the Reshiram and took it out in 1 shot. Yeah, if Carlos had brought a Dragon type move, Haxorus would have gone down. The thing is, I have a little bit of insight on this. Carlos was not prepped for the Haxorus, which was not a good decision. I ultimately told him the only reason Timmy will bring Haxorus is just to, you know, screw over his legends and just get some really good hits off. I personally didn't expect Haxorus, but I kept telling him you need to prep for all 9 Pokemon. Unfortunately, he didn't prep for the Haxorus. That has changed. He's changed where he's prepped now. But yeah, that was a big oversight on his part. The Grim using Thunder Wave on Psychic Terrain in front of Mewtwo. Zekrom not max protecting, knowing he was going to die to try to stall Mewtwo's Dynamax. Using Dark Pulse on the Marshadow instead of Scald, because Scald, although ultimately probably would have done roughly around the same damage, it likely wouldn't have killed the Marshadow. That's not the point. It could have burned. And he also lingered on Shell Smash. I was screaming. I was like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do not click Shell Smash in front of a Mars Shadow. I don't know if the Mars Shadow would have been able to steal the Spectral Thief, the stat boosts. I think it would have been able to the next turn, which would have won Timmy the match. So I'm glad Carlos did not click Shell Smash, because that would have been absolutely awful. But yeah, that was bad. You could say maybe Zekrom's Dynamax was not a great idea, but I don't think it was a bad idea either. Who else would he have Dynamax? Really is the question. I guess Crobat would have been probably a better candidate to Dynamax. That's about it. So I'm not really mad at his decision to Dynamax Zekrom. I just think Zekrom was not in a good position to take on Mewtwo. According to Carlos, Zekrom was never even supposed to be in front of Mewtwo, so ultimately that matchup was never going to end well. But there were also a couple mistakes on Timmy's side. He forgot about Turbo Blaze first turn, so that's why his Bama Swine got destroyed by the Reshiram. But I think most namely, no Shadow Sneak. No Shadow Sneak on the Mars Shadow. It's got Technician. I would carry Shadow Sneak. I know having 2 Ghost type moves is not ideal, but at the same time, Shadow Sneak's priority in case anything else speeds you. And again, Mars Shadow gets Technician. Shadow Sneak would have won Timmy this match because it eventually came down to Mars Shadow versus Crobat in a 1v1, which, by the way, Crobat did really, really well in this match. It took out Mewtwo, Mars Shadow, and Venusaur. It did incredibly well in this match, but it was the final 2 Pokemon in the field were Crobat and Mars Shadow, and Crobat took a lot of Stealth Rock damage, so it was very low health. So a Shadow Sneak from Mars Shadow would have killed Crobat, but unfortunately, Crobat was faster, used Acrobatics, finished off the Mars Shadow, and won Montebello this match. It was a 2v4 at one point, and I liked how Timmy had flashes of Lionheart, where how well he preserved his legendaries and how well he kept his pieces safe. You know, his kings. And queen, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to equate them to chess pieces. But he kept them safe regardless. He kept them safe, and it was a 2v4. And the fact that he managed to bring it back and essentially make it, you know, a 2v2 and then a 1v1, that was impressive. That was impressive how Timmy managed to keep his legends alive and take it to the very end. But unfortunately, he couldn't really overcome Carlos in that one. I think Timmy probably, if he had done a better job of taking advantage of Carlos's mistakes, this match would have gone differently. But he didn't really do that. And I think, I mean, I guess you could flip Carlos's mistakes as sort of a positive as well. You know, he made mistakes, but still came out with a pretty good win. So you could look at it both ways. I don't think it was, I think there's definitely still room for improvement, but he's still a little rough around the edges. But this is what I was talking about in the preseason roundup. The guy's a diamond in the rough. He's a 5-star prospect. So we definitely need to keep an eye on him. He was already ahead of the curve when we started training him. So it made sense that he was able to pull off this win. So yeah, that was our final matchup for week 1. Let's get into the fun part of the video, our week 2 predictions. I just realized, so by the way, I did take a quick break right there in the middle, and I just realized I had a different background. So yeah, the background's gonna change randomly in the middle of the video, whatever. I'm not re-recording this. Our week 2 matchups. First up, we have the Fort Sill Warriors and Lionheart Place taking on the Texas Tyranitar and the Doorman. Both coming away with solid wins. I think Fort Sill, they both had to come off of more strategic wins where they really had to work around their opponents. I'm gonna back Fort Sill. We're gonna back the reigning champion, of course, but don't be surprised if the Doorman comes up big in this match and does a lot of work against Fort Sill. The Doorman had to go through a really tough strategic battle in week 1, so I think that sort of experience should help him. He looked good. He looked good in that week 1 matchup, so I think he definitely is going to put up a really good fight here, and it's going to be a close one, but I'm going to take Fort Sill in that one. Next up, we have the New York Matangs versus Snowdonian Frostmoss, the 2 competitors who fell to the previous ones we were talking about. This is going to be a really interesting matchup. Again, Jakey's confidence, I really liked the way he played confidently, the way he just went for it, but not being too careless about a lot of his decisions. I like the balance he had. It'll be interesting to see how he approaches this match against Maxis, who's a lot slower, a lot more methodical, and is more willing to take time to make sure he makes the right moves, right? That's what I noticed about Maxis, and I like that. So for this one, I'm gonna back Oh man, we're gonna back Jakey. We'll back Jakey in this one. I just like the sort of confidence that he's playing with. Maybe it takes Maxis a week or two more to kind of adjust to singles still. But I would not be surprised if New York walked away with a win in this one. I would not be surprised at all. But we'll take Jakey for this one. We'll take Jakey for that one. Next up, we have the Iowa Incineroar versus the TJ Dropouts. We're going to back TJ in that one. I think TJ just naturally has a strong team, a balanced team above everything else. But with the fight that Landon put up in week 1, I think this genuinely could be a solid matchup, despite the 4 Pokemon thing. I think this could be a really solid matchup, honestly. If Landon comes out with the same sort of mentality, just kind of screw it, let's go for it, blow for blow. Smoosh needs to be ready for that. I'm going to back TJ, but I would not be surprised if Iowa put in a heck of a lot of work in this match. So I'm very curious to see how that one turns out. Next up, we have the Carolina Garchomps versus the San Antonio Espers. The San Antonio Espers had to deal with a pretty intense stalemate for a while there, but ultimately were able to make the right moves to pull ahead in that match. I liked what I saw to Sly Guy. I think maybe the decision making needs to speed up a little bit, and maybe some of those actions need to be taken a little quicker. And this is going to be a really interesting match because Carolina also did well to maneuver around the remaining Pokemon on the side of Iowa to make sure that he had his correct pieces at the end to be able to finish that match off. So the two of them did really well to reposition themselves to make sure they had all the right pieces at the end to be able to win the match. So this is going to be a really interesting match here. I'm actually going to back Carolina. I like the way Carolina played. I liked how they were just quicker on the draw. I think it is more important. They had confidence in their decision. Newt had confidence in his decisions. It seemed like with the way he was, picking his moves and all that good stuff. So I'm gonna back Carolina in this one. Although I expect it to be a nice tactical showdown. I would love to see that between these two. Next up, we have the LA Inferno versus the Colchester Celtics. We're back in Colchester. We're back in Colchester. I'm not backing myself. No bad juju here. Now this matchup is gonna be really interesting because Paige keeps saying, "I have a team of rejects. Let's see how good I can do." He has really good Pokemon on his team, especially his Legends. I mean, it's a good team. It is a good team. So I'm definitely not taking this lightly. Of course, it's Paige. Paige is incredible. So we're not taking this lightly at all whatsoever. But more importantly, I'm not giving any bad juju on me. So we're gonna take Colchester in this one. Next up, we have the Walton Wingles versus the Florida Rowlets. Mike did kind of get outplayed in the first half of that match. I don't know if he intentionally, I cannot remember if he mentioned in the video, if he intentionally was saving Groudon for the end or what was the sort of decision there. He did well to hold on to his Dynamax. He got a little lucky in that match, I won't lie. Whereas Walton were completely thrown off by me countering their strategy with the Trick Room. So if Walton learns their lesson, this will be a really interesting matchup. I need Nate to learn his lesson. I need Nate to realize that every team is going to bring something to counter him. So if he learns that lesson quick, this could be a really interesting matchup. I'm going to back Walton in this one. I think I'm going to back Nate to get his first win in the EBL. Again, as long as he learns his lesson from last week, that everyone knows what you're running now, especially now. So he has to be ready for those counters. He has to be ready to challenge Florida on that front with the counters. So I'm going to back Walton this one. I think Nate maybe walks away with his first win here. Next up, we have the Detroit Luxrays versus the DC Starmies. Actually, this is a really tough one. On one hand, you have a confident Detroit coming off a 6-0 win. Maybe not against the strongest opponent. No offense to Raging Lake. It's just simply because he did not have any prep time. And then you have the DC Starmers coming off of an incredibly close loss where he couldn't really capitalize on his opponent's mistakes. I think Timmy could have won that match had a couple things gone differently. I like DC's team a little bit more than Detroit's, I'm going to be honest. But Detroit, I think, is a little more threatening to me. Man. This is a tough one. This is a tough one. I think honestly Max has a couple more offensive threats. No, you know what? We're gonna back Timmy in this one. But this is gonna be, I mean, this should be a very close match. I feel like I think this one's definitely gonna go down to the wire. But I will back DC in this one. I would not be surprised at all if Detroit won. But we're gonna back DC in this one. I think DC will win that matchup there. And finally, we have the Montebello Morpico versus the Greater Manchester Greninjas. We're gonna back Montebello in this one. I'm not sure how much time Raging Lake has been able to put in into being able to prep for this match, or however it went down. So I think based off the performance in week 1, we're going to take Montebello in this one. I think if Carlos cleans up his mistakes, he's definitely going to be a force to reckon with this season, but particularly this week. If he cleans up those mistakes, does what he has to do, this should be a win for the side of Montebello. Now, to any of the competitors out there who I did not pick, prove me wrong. I've been saying this. I said this in every roundup last season. We're going to continue this. Prove me wrong. Get out there, prove me wrong. Put on a really good show. That's all I want to see. This week had a ton of incredible matches. I want to see you guys get out there and just prove me wrong. Put on a show, and let's see how this week turns out. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this roundup, for the week 1 roundup here. If you guys stuck it all the way through to here at this part, be sure to let me know what team you're rooting for this week and how you felt about week 1. Comment all that good stuff down below. Check out the other coaches, all the other coaches in the league. Go subscribe to all of them so you don't miss any matches in the Elite Battle League. And of course, subscribe to the Elite Battle League channel if you want to see more of me. And Lionheart plays in the power rankings, and then the top 5 plays and fails. And of course, be sure to share your social media, friends, family, everyone let the people know the Elite Battle League's where it's at. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.